Welcome to Impress Labs B2B and Technical Marketing Show. I'm Steve Farnsworth, and I'm here with Tor Valenza, also known as Solar Fred. He's a CMO at Solar at Impress. How you doing?
Hey, Steve. It's great to be with you on the show. I'm really excited to be talking and
Well, I'm
discussing with
glad
you.
you're here. I'm looking forward to chatting with you. You have a really interesting background. Just for anybody who doesn't really know, who's maybe not in solar specifically, who hasn't had the pleasure of following you on Twitter or meeting in person, tell them a little bit about who you are, if you wouldn't mind.
So, again, my name is Tor Valenza, but I'm known in the industry as Solar Fred for my Twitter handle, which is Solar Fred. And I've been doing solar marketing and social media evangelizing since around 2008. After I saw a double feature of An Inconvenient Truth and Who Killed the Electric Car. And I just realized that the word wasn't getting out that solar was ready for prime time. And it was the dawn of social media. And I really wanted to be a part of that. So I got into it full blast, educated myself, and started a blog on Renewable Energy World about good solar marketing practices, and been a consultant since then with my own company, On Things Solar. And then most recently, I joined Impress Labs at the beginning of 2015 because they had the same philosophy that I did.
So, because what we really want to get into is talking about kind of how marketing, how you have to market specifically to engineers and scientists. And so, if you could kind of tell me what you think of what you consider your marketing philosophy, and kind of how that's changed over time.
Well, I mean, for us, we have different markets, than scientists. I mean, I think for the renewable energy space, we're trying to get to businesses, we're trying to get to consumers. If you're talking about the B2B world, you're trying to get to the installers to choose your products. And I think, regardless of that segment, in my mind, my philosophy has always been be bold for solar, stand out and educate. It comes from a passionate advocacy background. And I think that we were in marketing 1.0 in the solar industry because I think it was being run by a lot of more technical people and engineers. And I think that's evolved over time. But we certainly weren't, I think, using the same great consumer practices that have been evolving with consumer brands. And like I said, I think over the last several years especially, we're now seeing more videos. We're now seeing a lot more sophisticated marketing in the consumer world. In the B2B space too, I'm seeing some better email outreach and people using new social platforms. So it's all evolved, and my philosophy really hasn't changed much. I think with Impress as well, we definitely want to grab people's attention, but we don't just want to pull a stunt. I think there has to be an educational component as well. Otherwise, people just shrug. I mean, we have to make them care.
As digital evolves itself, how's it impacting marketing and communications for those businesses? How's it affecting the marketing departments?
Well, again, we're talking about so many different segments, so it really depends. I think, in my mind, solar marketing in general is underfunded. I think we're spending a lot because if you're talking about the residential space, they're spending a lot of money, too much money per customer. So the acquisition cost is very high because they need a very high volume to keep up their installations, and so they're spending a lot on Google AdWords and other very expensive, marketing platforms. And my philosophy has always been much more of a building a community spirit type of marketing philosophy that engages with and reminds customers that they are part of this solar community, so that the acquisition costs are decreased by referrals, so that you never, ever, ever let a residential customer especially forget that they have a solar system on their roof. They just take for granted now that they're saving money. And, a year later, we have to remind them that they're saving money so that they can make it a topic of their conversation and be really a part of their lives so that they'll keep referring you if you've done a great job. Again, in the B2B space, kind of the same thing, although products are commoditized. I think marketing departments still have to make their customers feel like they're part of that brand family and brand equity. So to feel like they're part of that brand community and again, to talk to other installers about it. It really is obviously going to be different for each segment and who you're talking to, but I'm a strong believer in trying to educate customers and then build trust and then build community and referrals.
Yeah, good point. I mean, in your mind though, right now, kind of when you look at what are the biggest marketing challenges and opportunities in renewable energy right now?
Well, I mean, part of the big challenge that we're going through right now is that it's not just about marketing. Unfortunately, there's a lot of policy that right now is affecting the solar market, especially on the rooftop world of things. So it's also an opportunity in the sense that it forces solar companies to get outside of their sell space and to be educating their customers more about the policies that are affecting the return on their investment for installations. So I think one of the biggest challenges again, I'm more familiar with the solar marketing space than I am with other industries, but for us, I think budgets are always constrained. So we have very small marketing departments, and there's a few people doing a lot of things, and they can't be experts on all those things. And so that's why I see Impress Labs as a great partner for a lot of companies, because we can take on some of those expertise and be a great outside voice and perspective, as well as an executor on strategies to get things done that a small marketing department can't do, a relatively small department. So I really wish that marketing budgets in general were bigger, and that's not to say for us. I think in general there is a greater need for it to grow the industry, and yet we're usually the first budgets to be either constrained or cut sometimes. So, and yet the industry has to grow. So it's quite ironic. I'll just say that because we're 1.5% of the U.S. grid, there's plenty of opportunity to continue to grow marketing-wise and on the solar space-wise. So we just have to find more effective and cost-effective ways to get the word out.
So one of the many areas of expertise you have is you've done an incredible job communicating out there and using social in an area that was kind of later to the game in terms of social. How do you use social media platforms to your advantage?
I think the best advice, I don't think I would be Solar Fred and you'd be interviewing right now if I didn't do something very conscious and effective. And that is, I chose a few platforms and I decided to own them. There are so many social media spaces out there and people think they have to be everywhere. And that's not true. You have to be where your customers are, number one. That's most important. And then you have to be an expert in those few platforms. So I think in the solar space right now, the most important ones are Twitter. I just did a blog post about 60% of the energy conversations on Twitter are about solar. So there's a huge solar community out there, and they're all discussing solar and engaging and interacting, especially in the B2B space. I think it's important to be on Facebook in the residential space, and also on LinkedIn in LinkedIn groups. Each of these has a specific strategy that people have to think about. But I think, the one advice that I would give everybody is to, select those and really learn everything that you can about them, and then take advantage of them as much as possible.
So it's interesting, given your online persona, how has your digital presence evolved personally?
So I was nobody again in 2008, and I wanted to, I was just so frustrated by seeing what was happening again on those two movies, that we weren't acting fast enough. And so my own digital personal, I first tried to be Solar Tor, and people didn't get that. And so I developed my own personal brand because I started thinking, seriously about marketing, and I wanted to reflect my customers. And so that's why I have my SolarFred cap, because I was really trying to speak to installers. And so if you see me at a conference, I'm always going to have that. I always knew blogging was important, to have useful information and not to be just sell, 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 sell. And so, in terms of my own evolution about things, other than, again, owning those platforms, less so Facebook, although I do have I do have a group on Facebook that I use. I think I've become a little more automated in some things. I think that things have gotten easier in terms of platforms. So, MailChimp for newsletters and things like that. But essentially, it's always been a content marketing strategy. I mean, for me personally, I think the reason why people still seek me out for, these types of things and to speak at conferences and stuff like that is because I'm offering useful content to them, and that draws people back to me. Because they respect that thought leadership. And I think every brand should have thought leadership. Everybody has something to say. You just have to know how to ask those questions and what your customers and your target market have questions about, and then start answering those questions.
Well, maybe this is actually a good jumping off point to talk a little bit about the evolution of SolarFred. You mentioned it. Can you talk a little bit more about that and your personal branding?
Yeah, I mean, again, I always knew that I had to have a personal brand because I was starting from nothing. I mean, nobody knew me. What I did make sure was that I was educated. So I spoke the language of the people that I was trying to target. And so when I started on Twitter and I was thinking of a name, I knew again that Solar Tor wouldn't make sense. It sounds too foreign. And so I needed another name. And my middle name is not Fred, but I have a sort of ironic sense of humor. And there was a little bit of a joke between me and my ex-wife about a neighbor who never would tell us his name. And so we just started calling him Fred, because we just didn't want to keep saying that guy. And so when I started thinking about my personal brand, I thought, Fred, well, that sounds like an installer. And it was memorable. And to this day, there are people that come up to me and say, yeah, I didn't really love Solar Fred in the beginning, but you're right. I do remember it. And I said that to myself. Yeah, I mean, there's no other, Solar Fred sounds like someone who might be an installer, and at least you want to check him out. And then again, it's that stand out and educate thing, because if I was just a weird name without anything to back me up, then I wouldn't have grown. But because I had a great content behind my blog, that brand, people associate it with a positive thing, not a cheesy thing.
And even to the point of, you're so conscientious about your brand that the hat is part of that brand.
Well, like I said, when I'm off the clock, this is what I look like. But when I'm being Solar Fred, again, it's something that keeps reminding me of who my customer is, who I'm working for, who I'm trying to help. So when I'm writing, I definitely am always wearing this. When I go to conferences, people recognize me because of this, because this hat icon is on Twitter and pretty much everything that I do. So I think it shouldn't that shouldn't be limited to just me being a marketer. I feel like everybody who works within a company should have their own personal brand within that reflects their customers, but also that's personal, that's themselves. So whether that's a particular type of tie or it could be a pin, that's up to you. Maybe it's a color. I've also started wearing red shoes, and I won't show you those right now, but it's another thing that people are saying, that's Solar Fred. And so it's an entry into a conversation to engage with people. It's not going to sell anything, but it does make you stand out, especially in a commoditized field like solar is becoming right now.
I know that John Miller, one of the co-founders at Marketo, is famous for wearing purple, and he'll wear even purple tennis shoes awful lot when he presents and stuff.
Yeah.
Another guy, though, just talking about shoes, I know a guy named Ted Rubin, who's famous for his socks. He wears outrageous socks. He takes pictures of them every morning or most mornings.
Well, socks, I've noticed, is becoming a male fashion trend for men these days. That's not one of mine, but that's definitely something that I think everybody should choose in a way that's right for them. I mean, for you, Steve, I mean, what do you feel like people recognize you for? I mean, I think it's it's this, of course, and Twitter. You're always having those conversations, but I mean, if somebody saw you at a conference, would they recognize you for something?
They do. I actually have people come up to me all the time, and it's really quite sweet. They kind of go up and go, "Hey, I follow you," and people go, "I've been following you forever since you started," and that kind of stuff. It's always fun. It always surprises me because it's micro celebrity. I have to be in a place where there's people who actually follow Twitter and interested in marketing stuff.
Right.
But it happens sometimes. I've had, and it normally happens at events where there are like a lot of other marketers. Someone will go, "Hey, I'll be standing getting coffee," and they'll go, "I know you. You're Steveology," and it's like, oh, well.
Do you think that's like part of your glasses and your beard and everything that they're? I mean, I guess they're just recognizing. And forgive the
I think it's just my face because I try to have I think I have that kind of face. People go, "Oh, I know that guy from someplace." So.
Yeah.
So let me just ask you one last question before we wrap up. When you kind of look forward, you kind of seen a tremendous amount of digital marketing. How do you think over the next 3 to 5 years digital marketing will change?
I think that things are going to increasingly become a little bit easier. In other words, there's going to be always a new marketing tool, and this goes back to what I was saying before. Is I think everybody should try these new tools. And see how they work for them, and then own it. But you can't try everything. I mean, so every once in a while, I think you should definitely be reviewing the new things that are out there, whether that's for targeting, whether that's for remarketing, or anything like that, and see how it works. I mean, a lot of times they're free trials, so there's very little to do it. But if you do it, really own it and embrace it. So I definitely see that happening. I think that in general, of course, mobile is going to be everywhere, and it's interesting. Again, different target markets for the solar industry, but definitely for the residential space, I think that's going to be important. For the B2B space, it still might be important. One of the things that I know you've got all of this, with Google Hangouts, but one of the things that I'm a big proponent for is Periscope, Twitter's new Periscope app. And so we're going to be doing some interesting tactics using that in the future. And I have a tweet up at solar conferences that I always stream that live through Periscope. But I think there are other live events. So I think things are going to increasingly become engaging, and of course more visual. Our short attention spans are going to get even shorter and shorter. So unfortunately, I think the way to do that is going to be through mobile marketing and visual marketing, especially.
Yeah, and agreed. And I know now another big face on the playing field that started is Blab.
Lab? Okay,
Yeah,
you know what?
yeah.
I don't know about Blab.
No,
We'll have to.
it's kind of like, for lack of a better term, it's kind of like Google Hangouts for Twitter. And so, as opposed to as a live, you can have multiple people on an event. In fact, I'm doing a first one with a colleague on Monday. And people kind of jump into the conversation, so there can be multiple voices within that conversation. So,
I'll have to look into that. Thanks, Steveology, for giving me a great tip as usual. I mean,
and Tor, if people want to find you, how can they find you?
on Twitter, of course, at SolarFred, and please feel free to email me directly at tor@impresslab. Excuse me, tor at impresslabs.com.
And if they want to read about all the things you write about, where can they find you for there?
Multiple places. I'm on Renewable Energy World about once a week, and also on the Impress Labs website. And if you want to do a lot of archive posts, there's some on unthinksolar.com, my former company that joined with Impress Labs in the beginning of the year. So that website is still live, and there's a lot of great useful information there, all dedicated to solar, because I'm Solar Fred. So, but it can be applicable to other segments as well, and markets. So it couldn't hurt, I don't think.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Fred. And thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Steve. It's been great talking to you. Great conversation. Appreciate it.